of the Rastafari is to discuss, to consult, and act together in focused exchanges of ideas, thoughts, views, knowledge, to comment on specific problems and air considered views on courses of action to best follow in dealing with the world, to help us come to terms with history, politics, economics, education, and etc. So I don't repeat past errors. And instead of always trying to catch up with the world, the Rastafari reasoning seeks to stimulate creative thinking. So, my lords and empresses, tonight is another edition of the Rastafari reasoning organized by the Rastafari Council Ghana. And our speaker for tonight is Ras Thau Thau Haramanuba. He will be speaking on the topic Pan-Africanism, African Unity, and Immigration, the South African case study. Many of us know him because he has addressed us on this platform. He is the founder of the Rastafari United Front and a member of several organizations of Rastafari in South Africa and internationally. So I think when it's necessary, he will be telling us what is necessary to know about himself. But I will hereby invite General Thau Thau to lead the conversation on the topic Pan-Africanism, African Unity and Immigration, the South African case study. I give thanks, my lords and empresses. So General Thau Thau, please, the floor is yours.
Give thanks, Honorable Ras Kofi Asante. Greetings to honorable members on the platform. I see the name of my honorable chairperson, Ras Continental Council, our continental chairman, Daddy Bosco. I also see other honorable members on the platform, including Ras Aswad, whom was speaking when I joined the platform. I greet you all with the perfect love of Rastafari, Emperor Haile Selassie and Empress Men, and I give thanks. Yes, give thanks. The issue or what I'm invited to speak on here is quite an emotive subject, which require quite a balanced view of the reality of what is going on now in Africa and South Africa, because in the absence of a balanced view, we're going to have a United States of Africa and South Africa, or we're going to have Pan-Africanist Africa and patriotic South Africa. So this is now the new geopolitics shaping in front of our eyes in real time. And one of the reasons it will shape up this way, it will also be the result of rational, holistic analysis. If you going with the wind that everybody's saying that South Africans are xenophobic, South Africans are Afrophobic, and then South African vigilante groups, so you're going to have a very different view of the situation, which is not a true diagnosis of what is really taking place. But also, if you're going to adopt a knee-jerk approach to the current situation, you might come out with a very different analysis that put Pan-Africanism into a serious question mark. So let me start with, because this issue, it is what I'm called upon to address here. It is a three-pronged or three issues: Pan-Africanism, African unity, and migration. And South Africa being a case study, which is basically in a real time. Now, in terms of Pan-Africanism, we know that Pan-Africanism is one of the diaspora or the African diaspora initiatives. Just like Rastafari movement, which historically began in Jamaica. So Pan-Africanism, it first got organizational expression in 1900 when Sylvester Williams convened the first Pan-African conference. There's a difference. It was a conference, but subsequently the other gatherings that followed under this Pan-Africanism, they became what is known as Congress. The 1900 Pan-African Conference was convened in Manchester by Sylvester Williams, who had a brief stay in South Africa before going ahead to do that. By 1919, one person who was part of the first Pan-African Conference was W.E.B. Du Bois. So Du Bois convened the 1919 after the Treaty of Versailles, after the end of the First World War, but also to keep the spirit of Pan-Africanism. So he called it Congress instead of conference. Knowing the difference between conference and a Congress, which basically Congress have elasticity, have a longevity. And then we had the next one, I think around 1921, and then the next one around 1927, and then the next one, it was around 1930, I think 1932, and then the fifth one was in 1945. Now, the 1945 Pan-African Congress had a difference in a sense that all the four were only made up of the African diaspora, or in Rastafari, we say the living spora. So in the fifth one, you had Africans from the continent who were attending that. And this Congress had three secretaries: W.B. Du Bois, representing America, North America; George Petmore, representing the Caribbean; and then Kwame Nkrumah, representing Africa. Now, that Pan-African Congress, the fifth one in 1945, was also in Manchester. It took a very important step that Africa should be free. And as you know, after that, immediately the first country to be free was Ghana, which was led by a man who was a secretary at the fifth Pan-African Congress, Kwame Nkrumah, or Sajefu. And then in 1957, he called, 57-58, he called the All Africa Conference to discuss the situation of Africa, because at the 1945 Congress, a resolution was taken that Africa should establish mass movements. So subsequently from there, we have always been revolting en masse, and South Africa became the protest capital of the world and one of the places with the largest mass movements for almost everything, whether it is civic organizations, whether it's about civic issues, whether it's about religious issues, whether it's about political issues, whether it was about opposing apartheid. It was always done en masse, you know. So Ghana, being the first independent African country outside of Liberia and Ethiopia, as a result of the 1945 Congress. And then there were groups within the Pan-Africanist, the Monrovia group and the Casablanca group. The Monrovia group, Kwame Nkrumah belongs to, with the likes of Sekou Touré, and the Casablanca group, you had the likes of Emperor Haile Selassie, Julius Nyerere, Leopold Senghor, among others. They then met in Addis Ababa in 1963 to establish the Organization of African Unity, which is the first continental superstructure for Pan-Africanism, which is now the first time when Pan-Africanism is given a continental expression through Organization of African Unity. That was in 1963, 25th of May. That is why even today we're still celebrating African Liberation Day on the 25th of May. It was to commemorate that seminal, conceptual, inceptional Pan-African organization called the Organization of African Unity. Now, this continental superstructure of Pan-Africanism, known as OAU, met the following year in Egypt, Cairo, around July. Then they came out with a resolution that they are going to maintain colonial borders or borders that they inherited for colonialism, because not all borders really are colonial. Because where you have Ghana today, it is where there was an ancient Ghana empire, pre-colonial Africa. So some of the borders, they were established in existing traditional boundaries. Africa was a continent of kingdoms, and then it became a continent of countries after the 1884-1885 Berlin Conference, which took 3 months and 15 days to convene in Berlin. So from there, we started to have Africa as a continent of countries. But some of those countries were located within the traditional and pre-colonial boundaries. So the idea that because Berlin imposed artificial borders on us, we never had borders, it became a falsification of history. We had boundaries, we had borders. They were not meant like Western borders today with their own checkpoints and passport, but we had borders that were designed to regulate movement. When someone ran away from the Zulu kingdom going to the Pedi kingdom, he needs to report to the authorities of the place. And then from there, they will decide whether this person is worthy of being given a refuge or not. And if it's to be given a refuge, we had a thing called Tsimuyadira. In simple English, it means a farm of enemies. There were land allocated for those who were running away from their enemies. They cut a piece of land for them, give them a farm and 2 cows or 2 cattle to plow the land and also to milk. That is basically a leg start to begin his life. That for you to begin your life, since you are running away from destruction or from those who want to destroy you, we're going to give you 2 cattle and a farm, which then you can begin to rebuild your life. And if you're fortunate enough, they even give you a wife. So this is the structure of ancient African kingdom. But these ancient African kingdoms were not so idealistic as we try to every now and then idealize them and said, no, we never had borders in Africa. So therefore, it means that just a moment. Sorry, my lord. I had to attend to my daughter here. So I was still explaining the structure of the ancient society that we lived in, because you see, today when people talk, they will make big assumptions that, oh, if people go talk and their talk seems to go against their narrative or their accepted view, they'll be saying, oh, you're dividing Africa, or you're dividing Africans, or that Berlin imposed borders that divided Africa. Now, this type of thinking, it presupposes that there was a time when Africa was united, and then that unity was broken up by Berlin, or there was a time when Africa was united, and someone who is maybe joining the debate about undocumented Africans, therefore they're dividing Africa. So we need to clear up that misconception. Nobody can divide Africa that was never united. There was never a time Africa was united. So talks of dividing Africa, they are not historically correct, because there was never a time when Africa was united, and therefore it get divided by someone who has an opinion about borders and on all of that. So the 1964 OAU Cairo summit, which Emperor Haile Selassie, Osajefo Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Toure, all these Pan-Africanists were part of. They consciously took a conscious decision that they are going to maintain colonial borders. Then you had then a particular narrative that was led by the likes of Julius Nyerere, who were saying we need to go gradual with the issue of uniting Africa and removing borders, because if we're going to do it immediately and drastically, it is going to cause a serious problem. So there was the gradualist, and then there was Osajefo who was saying African unity now. But when people talk like that, it's the same case we're having in South Africa with Julius Malema. When Julius Malema talk about United States of Africa, there's the same case they had in the 80s with Thomas Sankara. That when you speak now, you're addressing Africans, you talk about African unity. It's the same problem they had with Muammar Gaddafi. That when you say Africa must unite now, and yet you are displaying tendencies that make them suspect that you don't want only Africa to be united, but you want to be the leader of that African unity. It creates suspicions among African leaders. It creates delays. It creates all of this type of talks of, no, let's go gradual, because somehow they suspect that you have ambitions to rule them, which they are very sensitive to that. I see it in the Rastafari movement. We have many unity movement, but the Rastafari movement is one of the most divided movements, because people think that whoever is advocating for unity wants to be the leader of that unity, and they're not going to give that person that satisfaction. So with Kwame Nkrumah, when he was advocating this thing, you must remember it was in 1963 when he was very vocal in the OAU. But by that time, Kwame Nkrumah had declared one-party state in Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah has banned other political parties. So in the eyes of suspicious ones, it was like he's already displaying dictatorial or dictator tendencies, that he's going to want to be the leader of this one Africa, and he's going to impose his intolerance to it. The same suspicions followed Thomas Sankara. The same suspicion followed Muammar Gaddafi. The same suspicion is following Julius Malema in South Africa, that this one, when he talk about one Africa, he wants to be the president of that one Africa. Because on social media, his followers, they're always making posts and posters claiming that this is the president of Africa. Now, like any other people, Africans don't like to be dominated or to be ruled by somebody whom they suspect that is going to infringe on their rights. This became the first challenge of United States of Africa, was that United States of Africa, who's going to lead it? Where is it going to be the headquarters of it? Where is that military going to be based? How is this president of this United States of Africa going to be held accountable? So, which in reality, these are all legitimate concerns. Thank you. So, which were legitimate concerns that needs to be dealt with within the context of their time, than to dismiss them, because one of the problem we tend to be making is try to analyze a past history using the present landscape or the present lenses. So that became the first challenge to United States of Africa, albeit that it is imposed from top to bottom by the heads of state in an organization which later became the African Union, which most people say this is just a committee for head of state who don't necessarily hold one another accountable on abuses that is happening in their countries. That is why you will get the likes of Idi Amin. While he's busy oppressing his people and killing people in Uganda, he was given opportunity to be the chairman of OAU, which you get dictators like Mobutu Sese Seko, who were very kleptocratic, but were accorded membership of the OAU, which you had the likes of Paul Biya, who's been ruling Cameroon from 1982, with the likes of Nguema, all these dictators who have been ruling forever, Museveni from 1986 until now. Actually, the 7th Pan-African Congress uh, was held in Kampala in 1994 under the stewardship of Museveni. So these leaders are able to claim to be Pan-Africanist while they are infringing on the rights of their citizens, while they are dictators, which they will want people to believe they are benevolent dictators. So the challenges surrounding Pan-Africanism as a United States of Africa began from 1963-1964 OAU summit with the heads of state. And these challenges persisted because then Africa is not a homogeneous continent politically. And Africa is not ethically neutral on anything. And Africa is not ideologically neutral. The OAU was formed during the Cold War politics. Most of our great African leaders, they were not necessarily killed for advocating Pan-Africanism. They were killed for their perceived relationship with the Soviet Union. Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown because it was perceived that he is a communist, or he's flirting with the communist bloc. Hence, you had CIA involved in the overthrow of him. Lumumba was killed because he asked for help from America. When America refused, he went to Russia to ask for help. And then from there, he was branded a communist. So we always masquerade these leaders as Pan-Africanists, but we don't explain the causes of their demise. The causes of their demise was the perception that they are communist. So not that because of the strength of their Pan-Africanism, but by their being perceived to be communist, therefore judged on the basis of guilt by association. So which is very important for us to note these things, that when people throwing around these individuals and these leaders as Pan-Africanists to the core, we need to define Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism means all African. Now, when you speak of all African, it means to say your political ideology must be African, your economic policies must be African, your cultural posture must be African, your spiritual orientation must be African, your governance system must be African. Now, this is coming from the social conception of the African social order. Now, the social conception of the African social order is in this way. African social order was first and foremost economics. Economics is about your ecology. Who is benefiting from your ecology? Who is benefiting from the fruits of your trees, from your fishes, from your minerals, from the product of your plant kingdom, animal kingdom, mineral kingdom, marine kingdom, and all of that which form part of your ecology. Now, that is economics. How is this thing of economic importance to us? Then politics, which is the next layer. This, you can think of it in terms of a concentric circles, a circle within a circle within a circle within a circle, and you can divide it into 7 circles. Let's deal with it in terms of concentric circles. The first outer circle is economics. The second inner circle is politics. The third inner circle is culture. The fourth inner circle is spirituality. The fifth inner circle is your idea of God. The sixth inner circle is your secret and sacred society. Your seventh inner circle is your concept of man, what among the Bantu refer to as Muntu, Umuntu, a person. That a person is a person because of other persons, that you derive your individuality from the collective. It places a priority of the community over an individual, that an individual is only an individual because of the community, and therefore he derives his individuality from the community that he's part of. So it means to say your economics informs your politics. Your politics informs your culture, and your culture informs your spirituality, and your spirituality informs your concept of God, and your concept of God informs your secret society. So what then it means is that when Kwame Nkrumah, they left the fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester and come to apply it in Africa, they added something to it. It became Pan-African nationalism. So they were known as Pan-African nationalists because now they are fighting for nation state, not necessarily the continent, even though that after Ghana gained independence, Osajefo Kwame Nkrumah made a declaration that the independence of Ghana, it is meaningless unless it is linked up to the total liberation of Africa. But the point is, it had to do with Ghana first and his governance of Ghana. Same way with Traore, Captain Ibrahim Traore. He's a beloved of Africa. All of us, we perceive him of being a serious Pan-African. But Traore is primarily and basically fighting for Burkina Faso. You know, he's fighting to strengthen the borders against the jihadist group that are coming through the Sahel region. So then they are forming the Sahel Alliance of himself, General Tiano of Niger, Colonel Goita of Mali. They're creating this Sahel Alliance. Although they are perceived and defined as Pan-Africanist, but their basic interest and focus is their nation state. So they are Pan-African nationalist. Then what Kwame Nkrumah added, and even the founder of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, Robert Sobukwe, added was Pan-Africanism based on scientific socialism. Now, scientific socialism is Marxism. Now, we know that Marx and Engels are one of the racist white men ever walked the earth. Now, we want to take an economic model that they developed in Europe based on European society to apply it in Africa, and we call it Pan-Africanism with scientific socialism based on socialist economy. But that socialist economy is not shaped by indigenous African societies. African societies were engaged in trade long before Adam Smith developed principles of capitalism. Long before capitalism came out of the Protestant ethics or the ethics of the Protestant church. Long before that, you had Mansa Musa as one of the richest men. It means to say he was a capitalist. Well, but that capitalism was based on African model of trade, be it barter trading or today what they want to refer to as the free trade agreement of the African Union. We had the Queen of Sheba, who was the richest queen who visited Solomon with 100 camels carrying gold to give to Solomon as a gift. She was a trader. She had merchants. Tamrin was a chief merchant. It means she was engaged in capital in preoccupation, which is therefore what we call African capitalism. or probably rudimentary stages of capitalism. So economic models don't necessarily have to be divided between capitalism or socialism. But our leaders were caught up in the Cold War politics. And if they don't go with America, so African leaders were divided into these two camps. Those who were sellouts or the scums of our race, as they are characterized based on revolutionary analysis and characterization, the likes of Mobutu Sese Seko, um, Fort Boigny. There were men who were backed up by the West. And those who were opposing that, there were men who were backed up by the East. So you had Africa fighting Western and Eastern politics in the continent of Africa, or West and Eastern war here, which we always say that the left wing and the right wing are the same wings of the Indo-European bird. And this Indo-European bird is white supremacy racism. Whether you are capitalist or you are socialist, you still falling under the model of European supremacy or white supremacy racism, which our leaders chose to take that either they are with Russia through scientific socialism, which is basically Marxist Leninist theory of economics, or they are with the West through capitalism, which is American-led economic model and framework. So that is the pitfalls of Pan-Africanism. One is that it was developed in the diaspora, not by Africans in the continent. Africans in the continent went and joined the 5th Pan-African Conference, that is 45 years later, after it was developed and shaped in the Western Hemisphere. The problematic part of it is that the Pan-African Convention, which was hosting the Pan-African Conference of 1900, which Sylvester Williams was part of, was a body made up by Europeans among them, was a conference funded by Europeans, was a conference run by men who were basically, some of them married to white women, like Sylvester Williams, George Pedmore, W.E.B. Du Bois. Kwame Nkrumah had his Arab wife, and Leopold Senghor had his French wife. So all of these people who were later to be known as fathers of Pan-Africanism, and people who were taking a cue from this 1900 Pan-Africanism, were basically one way or the other not all African, because their marriages were not also including Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism means all African. African beauty, African economics, African politics, African everything. I know Pan-Africanists who argue differently to defend this tendency of having more than 10 presidents of independent Africa married to white women. You know, the president of Botswana, Jomo Kenyatta, had a British wife, Leopold Senghor, all these leaders of ours, that we just give them a blanket a classification as Pan-Africanist, in spite of the fact that when you speak of Pan-Africanism, you speak of all African. Even your spirituality must be African. So in truth, if I have to say it bluntly, you can't be Pan-Africanist and be a communist. You can't be Pan-Africanist and be a capitalist. You can't be Pan-Africanist and be a Christian. You can't be a Pan-Africanist and be a Muslim, because then you are excluding a crucial aspect of yourself, which is your faith, which is supposed to draw it from African indigenous spirituality or African traditional religion, if you're going to go by that classification. And that becomes one of the challenging factors. Now, since these leaders have accepted to create to maintain colonial borders, it means to say they have to maintain immigration rules, immigration laws, that some of them they inherited it from their former colonizers, some of them they developed it post-independence. Every country in Africa have immigration rules. Interesting enough, the first African country to enforce that immigration rule was Ghana in 1969 under Busia. When Busia ruled Ghana after Kwame Nkrumah, he deported about 2 million um, West Africans, which will be Nigerians, Burkinabe, Togolese, Beninese. These were part of the 200 million who were deported. That is where we also had the name Ghana Must Go. Subsequently, you had that deportation system. Idi Amin, 1972, deported some 800,000 Asians, blaming them for the economic woes of Uganda. You had the president of Equatorial Guinea deporting Beninese because somebody in their country caricatured him negatively and make a caricature of himself. And then it went on, and then you had an opportunity time where Buhari was ruling Ghana in Nigeria in 1983, and then he decided to deport the Ghanaians as revenge of the 1969 deportation. And then you had the time 1985 when Obasanjo was ruling in Nigeria, also deported some Ghanaians and West Africans. You had Zimbabwe after independence, 3 years after independence, Zimbabwe deported the Malawians, Zambians, and so forth. All of these things are precipitated by the borders that these leaders in 1964 OAU summit decided that we're going to maintain these borders. So deportation is a border problem. A border problem is a creation of the 1964 OAU Cairo summit, which Kwame Nkrumah, Emperor Haile Selassie, Sekou Touré, Julius Nyerere decided that this is the position we hold. We're going to maintain these borders because we need to control a movement of the people, the influxes. We can't just say free movement because it will also be free movement of criminals, serial killers, drug dealers, human traffickers, and so forth. So every African country decided to strengthen its immigration rules. And in every country in Africa where immigration was enforced, and it took place, it was state sponsored. Ghana, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, Zimbabwe, Congo, Angola, Rwanda, Uganda, all these countries up until this year. This year, outside of South Africa, there are 4 more African countries that has been deporting Africans outside of their countries based on illegality. So all of them, except South Africa, this process of deportation was enforced by the state. Now, what makes it different with South Africa and therefore make the media, the intellectuals, the middle class, even the whole African continent to term it xenophobia? It is because it is enforced by citizens. It is demanded by citizens. The reason being that we are experiencing a collapsed state in South Africa. The state of South Africa is collapsed. We're going through 2 processes of inquiry. The other one is a parliamentary ad hoc committee. The second one is the Madlanga Commission, which is exposing a serious rot in our security cluster, the police, the justice system, the prosecution system, the defense system. There is a serious, the border management authority. There is a serious corruption. There are 186 million cases of corruption. There are officials who have been persecuted for taking bribes. Others have made millions out of selling South African citizenship, South African ID documents, and unaccounting to the influx of undocumented Africans in South Africa, which then in outside of these are just governmental structures, these are state institutions which are all corrupt and therefore are responsible for this unregulated movement which is currently causing a national crisis. Now, you can't address a national crisis by demonizing it and say it's xenophobia without looking at the roots of it, because this thing, before it reach where it is, South Africans opened the doors and welcome everybody under the auspices of they liberated us or they contributed to our liberation during the dark days of apartheid. But everybody who's here is not Pan-Africanist, it's not the people who actually gave that solidarity with an understanding that you are helping to liberate one country. You are having people, there is a TV program in South Africa every Sunday as I speak now. If you tune in to Mzansi Magic, there is a program dedicated to Nigerian drug dealers every Sunday who are busted for drug dealing and are shown on national TV. And not even once had you heard a voice coming from the Nigerian embassy in Pretoria and saying, we condemn criminal activities of citizens of our country here. But when it has been going on for more than 10 years, and then you have all manner of crimes, scam 419, online scams. I think I've dealt with more than 20 of them, people using fake account. And now when you sit down, you analyze it as an African, that this is fellow Africans who are targeting fellow Africans to scam them. And then you have thousands of churches, which are also criminal enterprises, money laundering, funds for drugs, human trafficking. I'm saying things that are on record in terms of South African legal system, Pastor Reverend Omotoso from Nigeria was convicted of raping more than 42 women. You had Bushiri from Malawi, who was engaged in money laundering and running a big Christian church. And when he finally escaped from South Africa, he escaped with 100 million rands. You have churches that were busted for being fronts for drug dealing. If you go to the website of Department of International Relations, which is South African Department of Foreign Affairs, there are 337 South African women who are imprisoned in Brazil, in Asia, in some part of Latin America, as for drug trafficking, because they are drug mules of their Nigerian boyfriend. And then the other situation you are having is that you have African men who are coming to South Africa without women in order to marry South African women to acquire citizenship. That is not African culture. In African culture, when you marry a woman, you take her to your country or to your home. Now here you are having men who are fighting to be citizens of a country in order based on them marrying women of that country in order for them to continue with criminal enterprises. Now, when that is questioned, then you are told that what about the white men who still have large chunks of your land? What about the Indians? What about the colors? The colors in South Africa is the mixed race, half black, half white, or half black and half anything, the mixed race. So now, instead of addressing the issue of illegality, criminality, you're given a diversion that what about the white man? You're afraid of the white man. But the white man is not a problem for South African black men alone. The white man is a problem of black people all over the world. No country in Africa has solved the problem of the white man. Even in the fifth region, sixth region, even in the African diaspora, in the Caribbean, in North America, in South America, in Europe, no man has solved the white problem. Now, when black people are addressing a black problem, because now the challenges that these South Africans are having is that These illegal enterprises, they are taking places in black communities. These churches that are scamming people are taking place in communities. The drugs that are sold that are sold here, they are sold in black communities. These money laundering, they happen in black communities. This human trafficking is black people trafficked by black people. And the people who are very notorious of this type of criminality is our Nigerian brothers, who are displaying it in Nigeria through Boko Haram, that this is practically one of their behavior. That with Boko Haram, you see them now, they kidnap some girls a couple of years back, 300 and something, sold them as slaves, sex slaves, and all of that. The latest thing that happened, they kidnapped about 56 or 50 odd toddlers. So if they do it to their own people, what makes you think that they will not do it to people whom they have low opinion about? So there is a general consensus in Africa that South Africans are lazy, South Africans are stupid. Now, when you otherize other people, that's how apartheid function. It otherizes South African black people. It said they are inferior. Now, once you otherize other people, you make them the other. And by otherizing them and you reduce them to subhuman, then you can treat them the way you want. We saw it with apartheid. The moment they decided that we are subhuman, we are kefas, then it allowed them to do whatever. You know, Sharpeville massacre, Soweto student uprising, a lot of black people were killed like flies. In such a state of emergency, a lot of black people were killed like flies because you have already otherized them. You have already decided they are ontologically and epistemologically inferior. You have already decided that they are subhuman. So therefore, when you give them subhuman treatment, it is justifiable. So what also give expression to criminality in South Africa is that people came in with an ideology that South Africans are lazy. So occupying every aspect of their economy is justifiable. Local economy is justifiable because they are lazy. One brother of mine, after they arrived in Ghana, he made a statement and said, South Africans, they don't go to work on Monday because they are all drunk. They can't go to work. But that is generalization and it's not true. It's not a true reflection of, but it is stuff developed. I've had communication with Zimbabwean women that they were told, you will never hear of Zimbabwean women marrying South African men because they were told that they are lazy, they are stupid, they are dangerous. So now you have all Africans, about 53 African states living in South Africa, having a low opinion about South Africans, being loud about it, verbalizing it on social media, on TV. I've seen many interviews where they will just say it casually as if nothing is wrong with it. You know, South Africans are lazy. Our politicians are saying it. Gwede Mantashe, the chairman of the ANC, said that. Julius Malema is saying it. So now what you are getting now is a pushback from those people that everybody is undermining us. So the impression is given is that they want South Africa without South Africans. Zimbabwean women, they don't get involved with South African men, but Zimbabwean men are sleeping with South African women. Nigerian men, 99.9% of them, they do not bring their women with them. They are marrying South African women for citizenship. And then sell drugs. They said 42 South Africans were deported from Ireland. Later, when they arrived here, it was found that all 42 of them are not South Africans, are Nigerians who use South Africans' document fraudulently because it is easy to acquire them. So it became a transit route. You move from Nigeria, come to South Africa, you make a fraudulent South African passport, you go to Europe, you go and commit crime. When you're caught there, it's South African. Now it become a reputational issue. It become a moral issue. It become a human relation, personal and interpersonal issue. So now, and then when this issue is highlighted, you talk about African unity. Now the question becomes, how are you going to unite with people that you have such a low opinion about them? It's not going to be a unity on equal basis. You're uniting with people that you have decided that they are lazy, they're inferior, they are stupid. They are not on your equal basis with you. It's not unity. Unity must be on equal strength. Now, I'm going to give context to what is going on in South Africa because our subject is based on the South Africans case study in order for us to reflect on Pan-Africanism, to reflect on migration, to reflect on most of these issues that has become so emotive, which is African unity, Pan-Africanism, and migration. That how are you going to have an African unity that is not unity of equals? Marcus got to talk about one God, one aim, destiny. So the aim is near. It is clear that those who say these people are lazy, so we're entitled to take the even economic opportunities that is due to them. You have Somalians who are running spaza shop mafia. They have we have what you call spaza shop mafia. We have a lot of cases where Somalians are killing South Africans when they try to open a spaza shop because they've already created that we monopolizing spaza shops. No South African should run a spaza shop. Should they do that, we kill them. We do all of these type of things. And these are recorded cases. And then now you have the issue of migration, that every country is enforcing migration except South Africa, that it is not expected to do that. Now, then it gives impression that, no, here we are not talking about borderless Africa. We're talking about borderless South Africa. Here we're not talking about Pan-Africanism. We're talking about the whole of Africa dominating South Africans. And when they try to speak, they are told that we liberated you. If they're not told that we helped to liberate you, they are told that what about the white men who still own chunks of land? The white man does not own land only in South Africa. He owns land everywhere in Africa and the Caribbean. In other countries, it's not loud like in South Africa. The reason why the whole Africa know that the white men still hold a chunk of land is because South Africans are very loud about it. There are several political parties that are very loud about it. But in most African countries, the land is also owned by multinational companies. Shell, BP, all these companies, they own big chunk of African land. So the problem of the white men is not a South African black people's or South African problem. The problem of the white man is an African problem globally, where the African is. So to say to the South Africans, what about the white men, as if other Africans have solved the issue of the white men in their countries or in the Caribbean or in North America or Latin America or Europe, is a disingenuous engagement, is a disingenuous conversation. So then Africa can't have a conversation based on dishonesty. And we can't have African unity based on criminality. And we can't have African unity based on disrespecting each other. It has to be made very clear why some of us who are known to be scholars of Pan-Africanism, staunch Pan-Africanist, Rastafari. I mean, I just came out of hosting a 3 days Rastafari Nation Council Conference, which represent all the 33 organizations of Rastafari in South Africa and the 7 churches of the Order of His Majesty. So when you hear people like us having a view, you must know that it is informed by a deep analysis, but also a lived experience. Like in my case, I'm a former military veteran because I was a freedom fighter during the liberation struggle, but also the first 4 years of democratic South Africa I was a soldier. So there is a military veterans benefits. There are benefits for many people, including illegal immigrants in South Africa. They get free health care. Some of them, they even get social grants. Some of them have houses. That is why they're fighting tooth and nail to be South Africans or to stay in South Africa. Because in South Africa, if you enter legally, 5 minutes into South Africa, you get a car accident, you're entitled to road accident fund. That goes into tunes of millions. There's even a program for that on TV of people who are given 7 million of road accident fund, which they blow it up. They call it "I blew it." Just get on YouTube, check I blew it. Is people who were beneficiaries of road accident fund, how they misuse it. But this road accident fund is not only applicable to South Africans, it is applicable to you. You enter this country from Ghana legally. 5 minutes into this country, get car accident, you're getting paid a lot of money for that through road accident fund. So there are a lot of benefits. Now, it is those benefits that draw people here. It's not Pan-Africanism. Africans are not here to build anything Pan-African. That is why they're telling us of, or they're telling South Africans of unfinished struggle, which they being here for 32 years never contributed nothing to kick out the white man, but they had to tell South Africans about the white man when South Africans said, stop selling drugs to our children. Stop human trafficking. Stop trafficking our women. Stop using marrying our sisters for citizenship. Stop using South African documents which you acquired fraudulently to go and commit crime in other countries. So they are told, what about the white men who still control your land? But you, as a Pan-Africanist, what are you doing about the white man, and what have you been doing for 32 years? You've been selling drugs. You have not been engaging. You have never built one structure to say, you South Africans, you gain independence late from us. We have been independent from 1957, 1958, 1960, 19 so and so. We have experience of independence. Let us teach you to finish the struggle and kick out the white man. Nobody's doing that. They're interested in their own businesses, churches that are scamming gullible, vulnerable South Africans. Now, every society has a pressure point. Now, it is said that, those who make remarks and who have observation like myself, we hate fellow Africans. Now, I had a podcast interview earlier today before this conversation that, what about Chinese? Because it looked like you're targeting fellow Africans, therefore you hate Africans. I said, stop making it about Africans and other races, because we had pre-colonial wars. Before we met the white men, we were just Africans alone here. We fought among ourselves. That is why you had best known warriors like Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu, you can watch both movies made of Shaka Zulu or about Shaka Zulu, the one made in the 80s, which was highly funded by Hollywood, and the other one that is just been made 3 years back here in South Africa that's been playing until last year. In those two movies, there is no part of that movie where you see Shaka killing the white man. Yet he's the greatest military genius. And then you ask, how did he become such a greatest military genius and famous for being a killer machine? It was for killing fellow black people. So pre-colonial wars, before colonialism, we had wars among ourselves which were based on resources, which were based on grazing land, which were based on livestock. So the fact that today Africans are also South Africans are having a big fight with their fellow Africans based on resources, based on beneficiations and access to economic development and so forth, is nothing new in the context of African history. There's nothing new about it. Some of us in South Africa have kings whose names are nicknames for stealing cattle. The Basotho king, the famous King Moshoeshoe, he got his name Moshoeshoe for stealing cattle of King Ramunaheng. And when he praised himself, he said, I did shave Ramunaheng and Gwe Shwe Shwe. Shwe 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 in the name Moshoeshoe, it is a sound made by a shaving machine. So in his praise poems, when he praising himself for stealing the cattle of another fellow African king, which is what they were doing before they discovered the white men or before the white men discovered them, and which is a human thing. White people, before they discover other people to kill, they were killing one another. Europe was colonized by Rome, and Rome killed about 8 million to 10 million Europeans to convert them to Christianity. Asia had its own wars. North Vietnam, South Vietnam, North Korea, South Korea, the Korean War. And then you go to every nation. So fighting and killing one another is a human thing that humanity has been dealing with. It is not necessarily a right thing to do. It is what everybody does. So the attempt to characterize South Africa as if it is engaging in something very, very, uh, very odd, very unique, very strange. When South Africans, before they met these fellow Africans that they are fighting with, they were fighting among themselves. Up until 1994, where the fight between the Xhosas and the Zulu, ANC and Inkatha, based on dominance. So if there is something that is a bone of contention, is going to create conflict. Now, calling South Africans Afrophobians, xenophobic, vigilantes is not based on history. It is based on idealism that, oh, you are dividing Africa. But Africans who are in South Africa, there's nothing unity about them. They are staying according to their own divisions that they came with them. Nigerians in Hillbrow, they have tough wars between the Igbos and the Yoruba, fighting over their own spheres of criminal expansion. Zimbabweans here in South Africa, same thing. Cameroons, they say, is Cameroonians in some portion of Uval. So there's nothing that is Pan-African or African unity even about this composition. You have areas that are dominated by Somalians like Mayfair, Koster, and then you have areas that are dominated by the Ethiopians like GP Street. The whole block of building in that street is occupied by the Ethiopians, and they've monopolized it, and they don't allow anybody who's not an Ethiopian to open a shop there. So they're creating their own territories which they don't allow other fellow Africans to be part of that. And when South Africans are trying to address that, they are Afrophobic and xenophobic. So this becomes a very imbalanced conversation, in a sense that it does not apply in-depth analysis of what is the cause of conflict. Instead of addressing the cause of conflict, they decided to disparage South Africans. You South Africans, you are not good. And then all Africans have to support Mexico against South Africa, as a form of punishment, not looking at the merits. Like I say, that there is a program dedicated to Nigerian drug dealers. And Nigerian embassy in Pretoria is exposed to that. And what are they saying when they see their citizens that every Sunday without failure are caught for drug dealing? That they came under the false pretense of refugees and all these type of things, all these visas that are guaranteed, given. I came to Ghana twice, being someone who traveled 18 African countries. Twice I paid 150 US dollars for visa. Failure to do that, Ghana wouldn't allow me to enter the country. And mind you, Ghana is supposed to be the home of Pan-Africanism, which has even came up with programs of the return. I think the last time when I was there was this big program of the return of the diaspora. I forgot that name again, but I know the name of it because it was all over the place when you move around Accra and so forth. We went to Cape Coast. We went to the door of no return to witness such kind of program. I went to Ethiopia many times. Which is supposed to be the headquarters of Africa, but you can't enter there if you don't comply with their visa regime, with their immigration regulations. So we are told that Ethiopia was never colonized. And now the question is, if Ethiopia was never colonized, why does it have colonial borders? Or what imposed those borders around it? Fine, there is a history that Ethiopia prides itself as an island of Christianity surrounded by sea of pagans, which is another Afrophobia. To say because you are Christians, the rest of Africans are pagans, and define yourself as an island of Christianity surrounded by sea of pagans. That is Afrophobia. But it depends on who is terming that. As a Rasta saying that, I will appear to be anti-Rasta, because I'm just telling you the historical fact that this country historically, before 1963, It did never identify itself with any African country. It used to identify itself with Israel. Until 1963, there is a documentary called Men of the Millennium, which is about Haile Selassie. And you have a lot of ministers in the government of Haile Selassie who tell you that until 1963, we never considered ourselves to be Africans until Haile Selassie dragged us screaming and kicking into Africa through the OAU. So I agree to this conversation because I always agree to what Ras Asante proposed from Ghana there as reasoning and so forth. But I've realized the irrationality involved in this, that I decided not to engage anymore in this subject because there is no proper analysis of the situation. There is emotionalism. You South Africans are xenophobic. Without merit, it's like for me to enter this particular debate is a gang of Zimbabwean cable thieves stole electric cables of my house. I said, in 2018, I organized anti-xenophobia march. Now, the same people I defended, they're stealing my cable. I have a man who's doing maintenance in my house. 2 weeks back, the same gang throw a brick at him trying to steal his cell phone. Now, it begin to sound to me like one is being a bit naive in the face of criminality. Where I stay, where they built the houses of military veterans, where I stay with other military veterans, we're living in a community made up of 80% of undocumented Africans who have access to all of these benefits. But at the same time, also they have a free reign of criminality. Now tell me, if a man live in a situation like that, dealing with a situation like that, will you not have a change of view in trying to understand this strange behavior? That why is it okay for the whole Africa to flock in South Africa, do all type of criminality? They're undocumented, you don't have their fingerprints and all so forth. And if you address it, you are not Pan-Africanist, or you are not Rasta, or you're Afrophobic, or you're xenophobic, and you're vigilante. Again, there is no vigilantism in a form of people being attacked violently. There have been a lot of misinformation and disinformation about these marches. I've been observing them closely. None of them has become violent. And where you see the leader of the marches beating some of the people is his own followers when he's stopping them from looting shops. But there's been so much disinformation. When it comes to South Africa, people say whatever they want. And I decided to say, you know what? I don't want to engage ignorance. I don't want to debate with our problems about our problems, because these Pan-Africanists and these Rastafarians are part of the problem. They're not coming with solution. Instead of telling you how do we address criminality, they tell you about what about the white man. So you are saying that Pan-Africanism, in your understanding, it exempt African criminality. But this is not what I learned from studying Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah did not promote criminality in his Pan-Africanism. That is why in his time, Ghana had immigration laws, Ghana had prisons for those who break the laws, Ghana has magistrate to trial those who flaunt the laws of the country. Ghana had the soldiers and police to safeguard the national sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Ghana. As much as Ghana was talking about the liberation of Ghana is meaningless unless it is taking into account the total liberation of Africa. So yeah, let me end my presentation here and open up for engagement, for comment, for questions, for criticism, for anything. Give thanks.
Rastafari. Yes, give thanks so much, General Thau Thau, for accepting to speak. Although, like you said, the issue has been a little bit emotional, but you accepted to speak based on your relationship with RCG and also as RCC Vice President. So we appreciate your joining us so much. At this stage, we invite comments, questions from ones. Seems we've heard a lot on the topic Pan-Africanism, African unity, and immigration. And Ras Thau Thau has given us an in-depth understanding about the South African case study. So we can show by hands, those of us who want to ask a question or make a comment. If the first comment question is ready, Empress Adia, I see your hand there. Please come in.
Yes, I thank you, Ras Kofi Asante and the Rastafari Council of Ghana for organizing this forum today. And thank you, General Thau Thau, for accepting the invitation to come and address us today. I'm listening to you. You've provided some fresh perspectives that I have to mull over and think about and ponder about. So I have no comments yet, but we'll let the elders speak. And then later, maybe I'll have a comment. The reason why I'm wanting to comment right now is because I was one of people with critical and extreme critical view about some of the things that you posted, that you share on Facebook, all of your interactions, because I follow you due to, the love we have for Africa, African humanity, community, oneness, Rastafari, liberty, freedom, unity. Yeah, I said that one. So yeah, I on Facebook a lot, I saw you and I was like, yeah, this great African brother. So I sent you a request, you responded prompto, and I've been following you since then with great admiration until the issues, our current issues in South Africa. I was very critical and shared a lot of your posts on our page. It generated stirred up a lot of emotions. And we requested, we would like to at least be able to speak to you and hear your perspective before we form our personal opinions and views. Give thanks for accepting to come and explain what you have explained. Like I said, it's a lot for me to mull over, but I just wanted to thank you for coming. And for Daddy Bosco, who showed his loyalty to your, and Ras Kofi Asante also, to, their interactions and knowing you already. But I was one of the sisters with hot vibes. Give thanks.
Give thanks. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Ras,
No, I wanted to say, give thanks
go
for. Ahead. Give thanks for your honest comment and honest reflection. And that is one of the reasons why I accepted to be part of this conversation in order to clear up things, because I know that most people are critical. Most people are thinking that, oh, now Thou he's a sellout. Some they say I am bored. I mean, at the last anti-xenophobia march was 2018, and it was actually sponsored by Empress Marina, which I did. But also it became an eye-opener because it was in a community. Johannesburg is a city that is 90% taken over by undocumented Africans. A serious oddity. There's no city in Africa that 80% or 90% of it is occupied by citizens of another country or by South Africans. There's no such thing. So I conducted a march from Uval, Berea, and Hillbrow. I contacted the African Diaspora Forum, which is an organization representing 44 African countries living here. None of them supported our march, including the Rastafari community. We were marching about 20, 30 of us. And then with the money that Empress Marina contributed, I've kept these rastas from the morning until after lunch. I took them to the Ethiopian restaurant. I have pictures, those pictures, I post them on Facebook too. I bought them njeras, we ate. The backlash I received from there was that, you see, he's even buying rastas to go and protest and protect these foreigners. Now, what disappointed me is that the very same people I was fighting for, they were just watching at us and laughing. our brothers are very pompous. That's why you hear South Africans today are saying, Nigerians, stop acting macho in our street and go and fight Boko Haram, because here they are the tough guys, you know. They are big men, they're loud, they say all type of things. And somehow I felt somehow in a way that this is the people I'm trying to fight for. And they're not joining this. And we have met their leaders, but they're looking at us, they're just laughing. It's like, well, you are a South African, this is a South African problem, see how you deal with it. That was my last involvement, and it made me reflect on my subjectivity, that I need to stop this knee-jerk reaction and this emotional reaction and be realistic. Are these people Pan-Africanist? I'm marching under the banner of Pan-Africanism, Africa for Africans, but they're not joining me. They are laughing at me, and the sun is very hot that time. You know, I had to buy waters, I had to buy food for all these people, and thanks to Mama Marina's contribution to that. She contributed to that. I have to emphasize that, because we couldn't do it. It was quite a tedious thing. I stay far from Johannesburg. I have to travel to Johannesburg. I have to go sleep in some hotels, meeting with authorities to get permission to march, organizing people, making posters until it happened. So with the money that we were sent, which was, when we changed, it was about 5,000 rand, I think, we managed to do all of those things. But then I realized what Benjamin Burombo from Zimbabwe said: when you're fighting for Africans, you must fight with one hand. The other hand must be free to fight Africans who are fighting you for fighting for them. I have a lived experience of that. So I don't get carried away by this emotional Pan-Africanism. People telling me that I'm not Rasta now because I'm addressing the issue of criminal. That from Haile Selassie to Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey said, my aim is not to take all black people to Africa, because some of you are useless here and you're going to be useless there. So that means there was a criteria to repatriation. It was not because you are black, so go to Africa. Haile Selassie, when he gave Shashamane, also made a criteria that they need scarce skills. They need people who are going to contribute to the development of Ethiopia. Not what you are seeing in South Africa, people who have entered here, the government don't know about them because they entered fraudulently. They are roaming the street. They are doing whatever they want. Nobody know where they stay, where they're accountable to. I travel Africa. I went to Namibia 3 times last year to do some lectures I do with my institute about African spirituality. I was going to do indigenous African astronomy. By the border, they need to know where you are visiting, and they call those people who are visiting, we're visiting a lodge, because that's where we're going to stay. But they need to find out if we have booked before they allow us to enter. So other African countries, they're strict on immigration, and South Africa is expected not to be strict on immigration, because apparently the only borders that are colonial are South African borders, and the rest of the borders in Africa are not colonial. And enforcing the border.
Rastafari, greetings, elders. Can we will not be able to have much time, so if we could also give opportunity and then we can continue. Salutations.
Yeah, Kandine, that will come as we the conversation is going. So we give thanks, but allow Ras Thau Thau to finish answering that, and Jah Beloved will put up his question, and then you can also follow up with your question. We thank you for that. So, my Lord General Thau Thau, if you can wrap up on that, we'll invite, then we can invite Jah Beloved to ask another question. Thank you.
Give thanks, Ras Kofi. You know, me, I'm a Rasta man. I'm not an academic or intellectual. I just happen to be well read because I have books and I travel. But what I don't do is this intellectual presentation of 2 minutes. So if I'm going to talk about something, you must know that I'm also talking from emotional lived experience. So the reason why I don't accept this, I will accept it with you. Other people I refuse, because of this thing that when you are talking, then someone cut you because you are saying things that they don't like or they don't want to hear, but they want to maintain a particular narrative about you. I don't do those things. I've already gave my disclosure. I'm a South African patriot. I'm a freedom fighter. South Africa come first for me before any other place in Africa. I'm an African too, and so it should be the case with every African that we need to hold our government responsible and accountable. We need to fix our countries. We need to solve the problem why Africans have to be running away from corrupt governments instead of confronting those corrupt governments. If we were staying in our countries and fighting for our countries like what South Africans are doing and they are used to do, we will not have this situation of crisis because we will hold these dictators accountable and remove them from power than to extend by leaving them and allow them to create our countries as their personal fiefdom and their criminal activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, General Thau Thau. Yeah, so Jabilove, please come in with your question.
Give thanks, Ras Kofi, and one love, family. General, give thanks for showing up, to answer the difficult questions. It's indeed a difficult topic, and it only takes brave people to, show up to own up to the narrative that we are trying to explore here. I have a couple questions, and then I have some comments. What I'm going to do is I'll ask the questions for now. Later on, if I get the opportunity, then I will make the comments. But listening to you now, General, it sounds to me I'm not getting something very clear. You did mention that Ethiopia, for instance, was never colonized, or it claims was never colonized, but yet, adheres to certain geographical borders. Obviously, if you have to exist within a region with other people being colonized, they will carve out the pieces of land and leave you with what you can defend. So I don't think that's even, I think that's a moot point to start with. But I'm also struggling with why you have issues with somebody like Kwame Nkrumah marrying an Egyptian wife. If we're going to go down to the race thing, then that becomes an issue. Otherwise, Egypt, to the best of my knowledge, was and is still part of Africa. So if they were talking about African unity, unless you want to make it Black African unity, then we have a case there. But even then, I've heard people who have issues with certain of our people in places like Somalia and so on. So I think it's a point which I don't think we should follow at all. That said, though, why do we have an issue with someone who married a woman from Africa? But we are also at the same time saying that there are some immigration laws that we're praising him for accepting. Where did those immigration laws come from? He's not free to marry a woman, but he's free to accept colonial immigration laws. Before these immigration laws were brought in general, what were our immigration laws? Our immigration laws were based on your idea of the concentric circle that you were explaining. It took us around and all of that, right? So if we're going to accept these immigration laws that you refer to, then why do we have a problem with other aspects? Like I said, I have some comments which I will, if I get the opportunity, highlight on a bit. But I'm getting the feeling that we're shifting the goalpost a little bit, right? Like when it comes to South Africa and the current situation, I also have a question there. Would it have been okay at the time if Ghana had asked the South African revolutionary fighters to leave its country because they were some sort of a nuisance? Would it have been okay for Botswana, for Zimbabwe, for all the other countries that hosted the freedom fighters to drive them out because they were a nuisance of some sort? These are questions that I have on my mind, General. And I thank you for showing up to answer these problems. Thank you. If I get the opportunity, I will offer those comments that I referred to. Give thanks.
Yes, my lord. before we'll take another question, and then I think we can take some 3 questions, and then you address them, if that's okay.
Yes, Kid.
Give
That's why I'm
time.
silent. I was just waiting from you. What is
All
the
right.
direction?
All right. So we'll take a question or comment from Kandini. Yeah, Kandini.
Yes, can I be heard, elders? Can I be heard? Rastafari community.
Rastafari, I got you.
All right.
Yeah, go on.
Greetings to elders of our establishment and defense of the Black people, and for this progressive platform we've created for ourselves. First of all, much thanks to the organizers of the program, and then also the speaker of today, Thau Thau, Comrade Thau Thau. We give thanks for your presentation. I follow the presentation. You give historical antecedents of which we had a point in time, a period that there were a disjoint of history in terms of Africa never be one. Even if you take any tribe in Africa, they can trace their lineage to a particular figure within the tribe, which means that you keep reducing the numbers of tribes and you get to know that Black people are from one source. But we can go into history today, but since the various sequential presentations you made and you call for intellectual discourse, which could have helped you to be able to explain yourself better, and you were not owning up. Everybody who is on the RCJ Ghana platform knows that I have been somebody who have advocated equally, like the Queen, the Empress Sadia presented about she getting worried about some of your posts on your Facebooks, and Comrade Aswad, and beautiful people on the platform who are astute people who also want to see the term Pan-Africanism taking its root in Africa, and for the Black people, the freedom we are seeking everywhere. I wanted you to speak, and when you speak, then we can equally collaborate. We can equally marry where we are breaking away. We can equally forge a common purpose again, or rekindle the idea of unity core. Upon listening to you, since we are in a state of quantum mentalism, I realize in the ionized form, you are in a state where now you no more trust that the patriots and the pioneers of African liberation and unity still establish a system where the African continent should still maintain its borders. But that was not the idea. They have just obtained freedom from colonial masters, and for any system to be able to progress, you needed to build a base. Understanding the base of unity, and Nkrumah, for instance, you mentioned in your intellectual presentation, ensure that almost every African was to be trained in Ghana, so that the agenda to be able to run a certain kind of common system for the entire continent will work. Questions like, where will we be stationed the military base in Africa? Africa is not going to state any military base anywhere, but around the borders of the continent, once it's a border, if we have any town there, then like the Continental One Military Command will have a station to protect our borders, our sea, and the land. And then within, so that there will be a full control of logistics, whereby when anybody enters into the continent, any part of the continent, we know that people have come from outside into the continent, and we could deal with them. Now, solutions are important. For that matter, we may not be able to have this wonderful discourse, and we will not figure out how the future will be looking at them. At the end of the day, the harm has already been done. based on historic antecedents you've mentioned from Ghana, Nigeria, and now South Africa and other many places. You go to Tunisia, you go to Egypt. Today, blacks are being on blacks. And for that matter, solutions are important. First of all, there are many ways to approach a problem. But I say the kind of ways South Africans have gone about solving the collapse of the South African system is not something that is welcoming, even within the South Africa state itself and then the African continent. Which means that since you are a brave soldier, comrade, who knows what is happening, which is disheartening, the kind of system that is afflicting Africa, afflicting themselves in a way that is going to affect all the race, could have also begin some of this system of unity. And through this, we could have had intellectual discourse to define a formula that is not going to be chaotic, or a formula that is not going to cause a lot of people in Africa to feel that in this age, human beings should not be treated like that anywhere. So my message to today is not a direct question to you, but reflections, because I've heard your presentation. I defended you on platforms that you must speak, and then we overstand where we move together.
That point has been made. So,
hello,
hello,
greetings, Ras.
Kandini. Yeah,
hello.
Very well said, and your question as well. So we said 3. So we'll take
Ras Kofi.
Empress Marina. Yes.
Ras Kofi.
Yes. Empress Marina's hand is up. So
yeah, I cannot. My phone is not working. My phone is not working well to put my hands up. So you have to recognize my voice when the opportunity comes.
All right, my lord. Immediately, Empress Marina.
Yeah. Give thanks.
Bless the Lord. Empress Marina, please.
Oh, bless the Lord, my Lord. I can't stay long because I'm at a function with Queen Mother Moses here in New York. So, but I'm trying to multitask and do 2 different things. So I stepped out of the room for a minute. I wanted to commend General Thau Thau on taking the time and having the humility to come and explain to us more fully his position. I understand fully well what he's saying. And in fact, we can draw a parallel. It is this, you're betwixt and between, right? So you're being immediately harmed. You're harmed by the white man who is controlling your country, right? But you're being immediately harmed on a daily basis by your own brothers and sisters with whom you live in close proximity. So you are betwixt and between. You're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea, right? It is synonymous to a woman who is being. You have a black Rastafari woman, Pan-Africanist, and all of that, but she's being physically abused by her king man, right? So what does she do? I mean, we know the system. We know the wicked Babylon system that has caused him the man to be frustrated and unable to provide for his family in the way that he would like to. We know who is ultimately responsible, but the man who is beating you every day is right. He's black just like you, so you're going to call the police on him, and the police may be white. So what does that make you? Does that make you a traitor for calling white police officer to come arrest a black man? So this is the type of dilemma, and so I see the analogy in the situation that is happening in South Africa right now, right? So do you tolerate the criminality, the abuse of your Nigerian, Ghanaian, brothers and sisters, so as to not be deemed called Afrophobic or xenophobic or whatever. So I mean, it's a multi-layered problem. That is what I'm trying to say. In the end, it's a multi-layered problem, and it will not be resolved on this Zoom call. And General Thau Thau, once again, I think more than ever now, we're really going to need that conference that I've been calling for some time, that you and I have been discussing about perhaps coming to Ghana and doing like a 2-3 day conference, that type of thing, where we there are very important issues that need to be addressed. And I think that this situation now presents yet another basis on which we need to call such a conference. All right, but once again, I want to thank General Thau Thau for taking the time and having the humility to come and explain to us his position more fully. Blessed love.
Blessed love, Empress Marina, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and for even sponsoring anti-Afrophobia matches and all that. We appreciate you a lot. So General Thau Thau will respond to this, and then Ras Aswad will come in with his question. General.
Kofi, there was another hand. I think there were three. Empress Marina, I think it's a mini, or is it a hand?
Yes, Empress Marina spoke, Kandini, Amani spoke, and then Jabi Lovett spoke. So we took three comment questions. Yeah. So you can address the questions. First was about your statement on Nkrumah and having an Egyptian or an Arab wife. Jabi Lovett thinks it's okay, but what do you find a problem with it? The second is about why, if Ghana had asked South African revolutionaries to leave, what would have been the implication, and how do you marry that with the current ongoing situation? Yes, and I think Kandini asked why South Africa used that approach, and the fact that he thinks all Africans have a common source. And so the idea that Africans were not united before, he thinks it's not historically accurate. Empress Marina commended you and emphasized the need for the 3-day conference she recommended. So in brief, these are three commentaries that came. So please, if you can respond to that.
Can I make a very quick comment first? Very brief though. I wasn't saying that Nkrumah being married to anybody is okay or not. I was just drawing it against the backdrop of that versus the idea that immigration laws were okay to be adopted, but marrying a woman from within Africa was not. So I did not specifically endorse marrying anybody from anywhere, just to be that clear. Thank you.
Yes, give thanks for the clarity, my lord. So I think General Thau Thau can respond to the three, and then we'll go to another set of give thanks.
Give thanks. I give thanks to my brethren's friends who spoke, Mama Marina, and the Empress who spoke before her, and Ras Kandini. You see, again, it's always important to deal with history within context. And the context of the situation is the reason why I gave a historical narrative background. That you must remember that before Kwame Nkrumah, who is the father of Pan-Africanism in Africa, before his mission was completed, overthrown. And from there, Africa was followed by a series of coups d'etat. We have so many military takeover that these corrupt leaders were not rebuked by the OAU. Some were even awarded with positions of being a chairman for the OAU for a year, like Idi Amin. No, as Mobutu Sese Seko were members of the OAU without being rebuked for human rights abuses going on in their countries. A perfect and beautiful analogy Empress Marie gave in terms of an abusive husband, and when you solution, you are seen to be unpatriotic or to be a sellout. We have several cases like that. In the past 2 years, there have been serious abuse coming from our Rastafari community. One brethren was losing his children. The other one killed his wife and hid her in the house until she's sick, and then the police have to come. When you highlight it, told that no, you're not a member of the Nayabing. Please don't get involved in Nayabing. You're embarrassing Nayabing and all of that. One one person who was the secretary of RCC, Mama Nontlantla, had a similar situation where the man she was involved with was abusing her daughter. And when she got all necessary evidence, reported the case to me, I said, no, that elder, he said he's a bingy man. So he's a bingy. She reported him to the elders. The elders protected the man. And then she came back and said, look, I have to deal with this to the Babylon. Okay, what is the Babylon way? She said, I'm going to open a case with the police. I'm going to report him to the police because the Council of Elders has failed. Now, this is the same situation we are facing, that when the government of South Africa in particular, has proven to be a failure in upholding the laws that it enacted in its own constitution, like immigration laws, to protect the citizens, and you have drug dealers running rampant, you have police officers who are involved, you have politicians who are implicated, you have government officials, top government officials who are implicated into that. You have a president who's having a scandal of harboring $8 million, putting it under his sofa. And when it was stolen, some of the people who caused this great scandal was undocumented Africans who were working in his farm. They had to chase others and go catch them in the among others. So it's yes, it is a system and structural problem that in Africa we fail to put structures in place that protect. As a result, it reached a point where people they feel like it's too much. They can't, and then they use the means that is in proposal, and there is a feedback. I don't know one whose mic is on, so it's really causing a problem. Maybe if we can all mute, because when I'm talking, I'm hearing some other people talking in the background. So the point I'm making is that the noble cause of Pan-Africanism, as Empress Marina will say, that is a good product with bad advertisers. Pan-Africanism suffered the same fate of a good product with bad advertisers, because if you have to address the issue of criminality, you are told that we are all black. And then the assumption, therefore, and the presupposition, therefore, is that, okay, Pan-Africanism, therefore, excuse black criminality. Pan-Africanism, therefore, excuse black corruption. Pan-Africanism and Rastafari excuse black waywardness. When you talk about, but our fellow blacks, what are they doing to their fellow blacks? You are told about, yeah, but what about the white men? Deal first with the white men. So you have to overlook criminality that is happening in your township and go straight to the white suburbs to go and look for illegal white foreigners, white drug dealers who are not your immediate problem, because your immediate problem is your fellow African who wants to fraudulently scam you online, who wants to sell drugs in your community, who are preventing citizens from running certain businesses because they've reinforced them, they've ring-fenced them as their area of influence or their own hegemony. It becomes problematic, because then it means we are not engaging in honest conversation. We're engaging in black protectionism. Then we talk about the issue of South Africans having received solidarity during apartheid, during in the dark days of apartheid, that they were exiled, they were assisted by other African countries. But now, was there a written agreement that we are going to assist you so that we come later in your free country to sell drugs, to engage in human trafficking, to engage in all criminality? Is it a historical fact that all African countries were involved in the liberation of South Africa. It's not a historical fact. That is why it took 53 African countries 34 years to liberate one country, when most of them liberated themselves in a space of 10 years to 16 years. Case in point, MPLA in Angola, Frelimo in Mozambique, they were formed in 1966. By 1974, they gained independence for both Mozambique and Angola. ZANU in Zimbabwe was formed 1966. 1980, it already gained independence, 16 years, 14 years. Now here you have the whole Africa, 53 countries, taking 34 years to liberate one country. After they liberated that country, they said, we liberated you. So you have to overlook everything that is not accepted in any African country. Drug dealing is criminal activity in any African country. Illegal migration is a criminal activity in any African country. Porous borders is a criminality of any African country. Corruption is criminality in any African country. What makes it acceptable in South Africa in the name of Pan-Africanism? So therefore, it offers us opportunity to reflect on our idea of Pan-Africanism, because South Africa provides the Pan-African world with a failed proof of concept. That if there's anywhere in Africa where Pan-Africanism has provided a failed proof of concept, is South Africa. So therefore, we have to return to the drawing board and ask ourselves, is this what we envisaged? Because these people, you say you assisted them, they were confined to the camps. I was a soldier during that time. We stayed in the camps. If you were not going to train for a military, you were going for school, you stayed at designated places. When we were given time, weekend off, we're given time to come back. Should you come late, you are in a serious trouble. You'll be punished for that. So it wasn't people who were all over the place running all sort of businesses, all scam, all criminality. So therefore, here you are having a situation whereby we are comparing apples with bananas in order to create a banana republic out of South Africa. This is my point of contention. Give thanks.
Yes, give thanks in response. Ras Thau, please come in with your question or comment.
All right, Rastafari, really, I give thanks and praise to everyone on the platform. First and foremost, give thanks to General Thau Thau for accepting the invitation and his historical presentation. I must say that, yes, when it comes to the historical aspect of it, you're on point. But my issue right now is that you started off with 7 points, 7 core fundamental points as regards to the African structure in the beginning. And the first one was economics. You went on to politics. But throughout your presentation, those two were left behind as regards to the issues in South Africa. The issues in South Africa, the main issues in South Africa right now is politics and economics. And you mentioned that in the beginning. But I think you got carried away with presenting the historical aspect of it, because I see you more as a historian. You're a very good historian. You remember the dates and the times and the issues and so on, and you present it very well. Nobody cannot fault you for that. But what I'm saying is that you have to remember that culture is not static. What you expect, what happened in the past and what is happening here today is different. Today you have globalization. All those marches and whatever is driven by the internet. We didn't have internet in those times. So a lot of those villages and communities were not in touch with each other. Today you have a global response coming from all about concerning the issue, just like if you're in a village and the village representatives and communities responding to that local aspect. Today it's global. All these Africans are all over the world right now, including members of South Africa communities all over the world. So you're going to get that global response. But I think what really happened is that the way this discussion was structured in the beginning wasn't the appropriate way. Because what should have happened is that we should have focused on the main concerns that the members of the RCG had, which is your method of handling the situation, your solutions to the problem. That is where the issue is. The whole historical aspect of it, fine. For those who want the knowledge in terms of where we're coming from, it's good. And I know some of us didn't understand certain things that you are saying. But that wasn't the core issue of why we call this meeting. What we want to understand from you is you are to be able to identify the main problem of why South Africa is going through what it is going through, and not just South Africa, all the other countries in Africa and the world. It is driven by a source and a force that is at the core of all of this. And you have not addressed that. You keep saying that it is a criminal, it is a drug dealer. How did they come to that stage? And why are they like that in South Africa today? It's economics and politics that is driving that. Who are the driving force behind those two things? You haven't mentioned that at all. You keep emphasizing that. Why would you leave the people in front of you and go and fight white man wherever? The white man is not wherever, he's in your community. The white man controls the biggest economic power in your same community, but you ignore him to go and fight these little petty traders and petty so-called criminals, which are not really the main issue of what is happening in South Africa and all over the world. It's a global issue, my brother, and it has to be tackled from a global issue. And you fail to present the issue in terms of saying that there's an international system which is known as capitalism, which is the driving force behind all of these corruption, the driving force of all of these environmental disaster, the driving force behind of all of this immoral behavior in the world that is driven by the white man. That is the foundation of it. But in just looking at the people that are in front of you, it causes you to miss the real issues that you're supposed to be focusing on. The amount of multinational corporations that are in South Africa that are doing much more damage, much more harm, killing more people with all kinds of poison and chemicals and whatever, and robbing the people of their economic power and so on and so forth, which is a bigger issue that you're not talking about. So I'm saying now that you have trivialized the issue. And that is what I was saying when I saw you pushing this agenda. It becomes a trivial issue. It becomes an issue that it becomes a very divisive issue. That is why I will still say today that your agenda is Afrophobic, because you are focusing on African, and Africans are not the problem. The African people that's coming over to look at a daily living is not the problem. They are driven and they are forced to come to South Africa because of what they have done to all the other economies, and even doing to South Africa as well. So you got to go back to the core of the issue, that capitalism is the foundation and that system must go down. You haven't mentioned anything about the government in terms of your action as regards to dealing with that governmental structure that's supposed to be representing the people. I think that your action first should be about mobilizing the grassroots people, build a force in South Africa that will confront the government to defeat that political system so that proper representation can be there. But you are dealing with it as a one man by yourself, basically, that's what I'm seeing. You may have supporters and so on, but you are not looking at the broader picture in terms of broadening that struggle to the level where the masses become a part of it. And if you're not talking about a mass movement, those few people that I'm seeing walking up and down, talking about they're ready to arm people and do whatever, they are not significant in terms of what the struggle needs in South Africa. And you made a statement that they haven't armed anyone. Unless these Ghanaians are lying, unless these other countries, the people, citizens of those countries are, there was so much evidence that has been presented of what these people have done to these individuals, the barbaric behavior by some of these people in terms of what they did to them. And you're saying that they're lying. Just like what that woman named Jacinta, she did the same thing. So for me personally, I am not pleased with this presentation because of the fact that you haven't gone to the core issue of why we call this meeting, right? And you're not dealing from a pragmatic standpoint neither, that the world has changed. from those ancient African traditional culture. The African civilization have been disrupted in so much different ways that people no longer function in those effective order so to be able to implement what you are doing. You are in a system right now where you have to look at the dialectical aspect of it as regards to the scientific process which is necessary to get you to a stage so you can mobilize the people to take action against the government and against those international, multinational corporations that is driven by white people that are forcing these black people to do what they are doing all over Africa and other countries in the world. So that's basically my presentation on it. And I think, just like Empress Marina said, we need a summit. We need a proper timing that we can take these issues one by one and give it enough quality time to discuss it, because you mix it up with so much historical things right now that people are more mesmerized, are focusing on the historical analysis, which is very good. That's a whole historical presentation that is good for education. But the core issue as regards to why are you proposing this barbaric approach of kicking out the people not recognized, taking people out of hospitals, taking them out of hospital, taking children out of hospital. How can anybody support something like that? Isn't there another way to do it? There must be another way. And I'm saying that you are not using the Rastafari way. You are not using the African traditional way. I do not see any African society that would take children out of hospital and throw them out in the street when they are sick, pregnant women and all these different kind of things. So that approach to me, I will never accept it, Bridget. I will never accept it. So I will just end right here for now and listen to your response. Give thanks.
Give thanks, Elder. With all due respect, I hear what you are going to say, or what you have said. I'm going to try to respond to you with as much humility as I can, in spite of the fact that you're talking down on me. You're telling me that I'm not Rasta. And,
no, I didn't say anything.
And as if I'm the one who organizing this thing. And I just shared my opinion based on the situation I'm with on the ground here. I spent more than 20 years on social media fighting the white man. Until 3 months ago, I got myself involved in this immigration issue. So there is no issue that is without historical context, albeit that you decided to dismiss it. But I have to speak from a historical context. I can't speak without giving a historical context to the situation itself. Historically, I was part of a liberation movement whose its military operation was one settler, one bullet. We were fighting to drive the white men to the sea. That was what the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania was all about, and I was its soldier, Azanian People's Liberation Army. Until we were kicked out of Tanzania to go and join the ANC that was negotiating with the white men when we were busy killing the white men. So nobody is qualified to tell me what about the white men when I use my youth age at a tender age of 16. I joined the liberation movement to go and kill the white men and drive them out of South Africa. And we were stopped by the Tanzanian government, by the OAU Liberation Committee, which was giving us support, by other countries that were supporting us. They forced us to go. They actually had to kill our commander first, Sabelo Palmer, and force us to join negotiations in South Africa. I came back to South Africa 2 months after Mandela was a president, because I was doing handing over of military camps, the Tanzanian government and the civilian the civilian camps that they gave to us. So I cannot be grouped with people who fear the white man. But otherwise, like anybody else, you are entitled to your opinion, you have the right to be wrong. To assume that I support barbarian ways, it is actually revealing the core of this conversation, which was basically a kangaroo court for me. I understand that. And I've dealt with that for the past 3 months. And it was a choice I made to be part of this. I did not rule out that possibility that this will turn out into a kangaroo court for me and blame the situation of South Africa on me as if I have a power to tell the people who protest to stop. I could have closed my mouth on this issue and just focus on my usual African spirituality stuff that I'm being dealing with. The situation will still be the same. I can mobilize the Rastafari community to march against or to protest or to go to government or to do whatever. We are not so much valued here, like anywhere in any African country. Rastafari voice is very, very low. So to assume that when I sneeze, everybody in South Africa catches flu. If I say something, it will change anything. It is really the point that we don't have that voice. I just spoke in my little way based on my knowledge of the situation in Africa, in South Africa. There are a lot of Facebook posts where they're disparaging South Africans like what you are doing now. And now, if you keep on saying South Africans are stupid, including those who are talking for you, Julius Malema is talking for you. They even call him president of the foreigners. He's saying these people who do not even comply according to the city bylaws to establish businesses, they are going to be the future employers of South Africa. And we see them in universities. I'm the deputy chairman of Rastafari Nation Council. My chairman is a director of the University of Northwest, Ras Foundation, Ras Muteo. The African professors from Zambia, they have put away his PhD because they have a particular agenda about South Africans. So to say I'm having a particular agenda is your assumptions. You're entitled to that. I know that the Rastafari have a liberty to make assumptions on one another. I have no agenda. I have nobody supporting me. I'm just expressing my view. And what you recommend that we should do, you should be able to put in. If you feel like I should mobilize people, mobilizing people is money. You should put money to it. I will do it. I told you I did it when Empress Marina and RCC took a resolution that I must organize an anti-xenophobia march. And I organized that march and I left that with an egg on my face, both being mocked by the Rasta community and by the same African diaspora community that I was trying to defend here. So I'm not going to try to explain myself about the historicals and the agenda you're assuming that I have and the barbarity. You are entitled to your opinion. I'm not going to falter you on it. And one thing I agree with you is what Empress Marina said, that we need a summit to ventilate this issue. Blaming me as if I'm the president of South Africa does not help. I'm just a leader in certain section of Rastafari community, but that community is equally not so much recognized here. Even if I chose to be on the other side of the conversation and say no to xenophobia, no to Afrophobia, it would have made no dent. This is the masses of the people of South Africa. Every incident from 2008 of this so-called xenophobia, when it happened, it keep on getting traction because government is not doing anything, and my fellow Africans are getting more and more emboldened, and their criminality is getting more and more until it enter my house. I told you that I gotten involved the moment when my electric cables were stolen and my maintenance man was marked on the corner by my brothers across the Limpopo River from Zimbabwe. That is what got me personally involved, because now this criminality is entering my house. So I must wait until my child is killed, because I'm living in a community where people are undocumented, their movement is not monitored, their criminality is not under any control. I must just shut up because I'm a Rasta and I'm a Pan-Africanist. With all due respect, I can't do that. So any view you hold, you are really entitled to it. You are speaking from a place of comfort and from a distance, which you are not speaking actually from the actual experience of what we are dealing with. So it is easy to pontificate like our middle class in South Africa. You see, when we are living in a society that is made up of the have and the have little and the have not, this is what we come out with, because the little, which is called the middle class, which are caught up in the middle or having a split personality, is that they don't seem to address the point. They address their intellectualization of the point. And the problem with Pan-Africanism is that you can't get Pan-Africanism without intellectuals. You can get intellectuals without Pan-Africanism. And intellectuals, they try to intellectualize the African condition, and politicians, they try to politicize the African condition, and the Rastafari, they try to Rastasize the African condition instead of providing solutions. So the solution I get from you is to blame me, not to provide a solution. Because I talked about the government that collapsed. I talked about corruption. I talked about economics. I talked about the politics of this issue. It's a socio-economic issue. When South Africans refuse certain type of jobs because during apartheid, they were not allowed to have unions. Now they are unionized. They have rights. There is a minimum salary that is placed, that if a South African employ a person, they must be paid. And then you have someone who's undocumented, who's willing to take the same job on the basis of two people, that he will bring his cousin and they do the job, they get paid the money that's supposed to be paid to a unionized South African, and then they accept that a slave wage or cheap labor wage, and then therefore leads to say South African are lazy. It's economic issue, it's survival issue, it's poverty. It's a social cohesion, that you have an influx of Africans occupying jobs that are supposed to be getting for the local, going to the locals, and then their justification is that the locals are lazy. It's a social cohesion issue. It is shaping the social fabric. There is no way, it is creating resentment. Now, you should treat my criticalness and with analysis than with disparaging and with value judgment, and to come out of this feeling bigger and stronger, that you have rebuked me, you have demonized me, you have classified me with barbarians, and you have decided that um, I'm engaged in barbarianism.
Rastafari. Yes, we have this 30 minutes of reasoning, and we give Ras Thau Thau for his time, his presence. And Ras Thau Thau, just to put up a comment, you see, what you said about organizing a protest and what goes into a protest. There was the recommendation that the Rastafari community in Ghana should organize a protest. And the very person who made that recommendation was asked to prepare a position paper by Rasaswad. And as we speak here, as we sit here, that became the end of the conversation about what we can do about the protest. So we appreciate a lot what goes into organizing. And sometimes there's a proverb in Akan that those who are not, those who weed tongues with their mouth, they barely get hurt, because when you have to weed tongues, your hands have to get involved, and you would appreciate what goes into weeding tongues. But if you just sit back and say, oh, the tongue should have been weeded, such a person, you never get hurt. So I appreciate that people will even overlook what goes into organizing the human, even the human resource part of it, and how do you call it? finance bit, a lot of people take it for granted. And like you speak, at home, we have not been able to organize a protest like it was proposed because of some of these challenges. So there are those of us who don't blame you, or portion blame to you as a Rastafari in South Africa for being the genesis of the problem or the solution to the problem. But the global, like we say, Rastafari globally may take a stand and act. So like Empress Marina is recommending, in the future, Rastafari may take a stand or may organize to address some of these issues. But we must be ready to put in the human resources and also the finance bit to make that a reality. I would like to ask if there is any other comments.
Can I respond?
You address that and then, yes.
Can I respond?
Yes, Ras.
My lord. Yeah. Which protest that I was asked to participate in and I didn't participate in?
No, Ras, let's not get personal. I said you...
No, it's not personal, my lord. You make a statement and you must back it up.
A brother recommended, like Ras Malcolm, he made a recommendation that Ras Thau Kofi Asante, why are you not organizing a protest against South African march? And you said that, okay, you are in the media, so you are in a better position to prepare the position paper. And also, I also responded by telling the brother that I'm ready whenever he's ready for us to organize anything. But the conversation ended when people have to take responsibility. You understand?
Hold on a minute, my lord. Let me tell you something, my lord. You know my history in Ghana. You know my history in Jamaica. You know how many of these things I organized. The last time I fainted on a march. You understand? Because of the exertion. I am always on the front line doing the work. The discussion fell down because of others did not come in to represent.
My Lord,
you say that I didn't make it happen.
No,
look at the amount of advocacy work I've done in Ghana. It is there. It's still there. Huh?
I'm saying, like, when you collapsed, there was no Rastaman to stand in.
Exactly.
That is what I'm trying to say, that human resources are required to do the day-to-day Rastafari work. People are supposed to be on the ground to get the work done. And also there comes the financial component. So sometimes organizing, when we say the brother has not organized, he even told us that he organized one Afrophobia march funded by Empress Marina. So if we as a community decide that organize another Afrophobia march, South African Rastafari may take it up. But it comes with a certain responsibility from us. And that's what I'm saying, that globally, that level of responsibility that I, Rastafari, must commit, the sacrifices like you do every day. Ras Thau Thau also does the same in South Africa. And the both of you are Rastafari elders I have so much respect for. Hence, I'm saying that it is not enough to say that somebody was supposed to organize without appreciating what goes into, because here in Ghana, those of us throwing in the fire burning Afrophobia and all that, we were tasked to organize a protest. Ras Malcolm recommended that, and you told him to write a position paper, and he failed to do that. And I'm saying that is some of the impediments that causes us not to be able to achieve. And so when we are judging a brother, those of us who appreciate what goes into some of these things will not criticize a brother for not organizing a protest, because we know what goes into that. I appreciate this stance.
My Lord Asante, the point is that we all know challenges that goes into putting up a program.
Kandini, excuse me. Before you come in, Jabi has his hands up. So we'll take Jabi Beloved. We'll take you. Ruben Kush also has his hands up. So we'll take Jabi Beloved. First, let's take Ruben Kush. I think he has not spoken yet. We'll take Ruben Kush, Jabi Beloved, and then Kandini. Anybody who also wants to make a comment can raise his hands. Please, let's try and be brief, because we have exhausted the time allotted for this conversation. But, I and I, we can reason. So, Ruben Kush, please come in with your comments. to be followed by.
Yes, greetings and blessings to ones on this Zoom meeting. I bring love in the name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I the First. Rastafari bless. Yeah, I'm listening to the reasoning, and one of the things I first of all want to say that it's important that we listen to each other and learn something from each other. We're all coming from different backgrounds and coming from different places. So there's always going to be different opinions and different things said that we're not used to hearing, and we may react in a way that's not productive. All right. Now, the reason why I wanted to speak in this forum is that I repatriated to Ethiopia in 1992. Right, once the Derg regime was ousted. As a Rastafari brethren, I repatriated to Ethiopia to help Ethiopia in its development, to develop the country's infrastructure, bring opportunities to Ethiopian people. I'm a mechanical engineer. I have my own factory in Addis Ababa. I was able to put young youths into college to learn engineering and also into university. So one of the things repatriation on the continent is to give something back, not just to take. We have to be able to give something back. And living in Ethiopia, the immigration issue was always a problem for one's repatriating. Immigration is a problem for all of us who repatriate wherever we are on the continent. We leave a system. I'm born in England, and I fight the system in England, and I left the system in England and went to Ethiopia, where there was also a system which I was not agreeable with also. So when you're fighting the system, right, you have to replace what you're fighting. And that's what we failed to do in the diaspora and also on the continent. Now, as a Rasta man, I didn't go to Africa to get involved in the politics of the African governments. I wasn't part of getting involved in the politics in the West, so I'm not going to do that on the continent. And this situation in South Africa, it saddens all of us. All right. But as Rastafari, whether we're on the continent or whether we're in the diaspora, we have to be very careful how much interaction we have with the African government. We've seen that the AU, I've been inside the AU, I've met with lots of people in the AU, and the AU is a career-minded place. Everyone that works in the AU is working on a career perspective, not on a liberation perspective, and definitely not on a One Africa perspective. And these are the issues that are affecting all the other countries on the continent. So in South Africa now, the masses in South Africa are doing things which we are not in agreement with. The government it seems like the government is not paying too much attention in trying to find a solution to this immigration issue. It's been used to bring the masses in South Africa to fight for something that they don't fully understand. So to hear, one's coming down on Ras Thau Thau in the way that ones are coming down on Ras Thau Thau, for one, it's not fair. All right. And we as Rastafari, we need to organize and centralize ourselves on the continent, right? So that we can assist ones who want to come on the continent. We can assist and help ones on the continent to develop. The governments on the continent don't really have much time for us who they see as revolutionary or want to bring about liberation for Black people. They see it as a hindrance because they don't want their people to be thinking in that way. All of the African continents are engaged in developing their countries, building up their infrastructure, establishing a middle class, and bringing training and opportunities for their people. That is what's happening on the continent. What's happening in South Africa? It's very difficult to find or even suggest a solution to bring some kind of solution because there are so many people that are involved. We're not talking about 10 and 20 or 100 people who are rioting or looting or protesting. We're talking about millions of people, right? So we have to be very careful in how we're discussing this issue. All right. In Ethiopia, in 2018, 2019, around that time, the RCC, Rastafari Continental Committee, I believe it was called, was established to assist the Rastafari brethren on the continent. All right. And that is a work to assist the Rastafari brethren and sistrins who were born on the continent, who are having issues and difficulties in integrating in their own countries in terms of opportunities. So for the Rastafari community on the continent now, to try to find a solution as to what is happening in South Africa at the moment, I would ask that one be very mindful, very mindful. The system is set in a way to always put the liberation fighters and liberation-minded people at the bottom of the pile. That's how it was in the West. It's no different in Africa, whether you want to call it colonial or neo-colonial or whatever you want to call it, it's a system. All right. And we didn't repatriate to be a part of any system. All right. So having a protest where thousands of South Africans are rising up for something that they believe, is right for them, is wrong for a lot of people around the world. But we have to be mindful of how we as the Rastafari community engage with our Rastafari brethren and sistrins in South Africa. Because it's not easy for them. All right, it's their people. All right, and as an example, in Ethiopia, I've been in Ethiopia since 1992, and I've seen so much different uprising take place on a tribal level. And we, as the Rastafari community, we cannot get involved in that because we're calling for unity. Doesn't matter what tribe you come from, let's unite. But each tribe has their own history and their own rights that they believe are not being adhered to. South Africa is a different ball game. I was in Ethiopia in 1994 when Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. Ethiopia was still a transitional government. And now Ethiopia has a government which is about 35 years old, very young as a government. South Africa has a very, very young government trying to implement things and opportunities for its people. And if the people can't define who they are, then it makes it very difficult for ones from the outside to come in to dictate, do this, do this, do that, do this, do that. Because I can tell you, if the Rastafari community went on any kind of protest in Ethiopia, it wouldn't be nice for us. We use diplomacy and advocate for Rastafari rights on the continent. And that's what we should be continuing doing. It's very difficult not to want to have a view as to what is happening in South Africa. But for me, at this present time, we have to listen and see and learn for ourselves so that we can be stronger as a Rastafari people on the continent and Rastafari in the diaspora, because there's no unity collectively within the Rastafari community globally. It's not there. All right. So I just wanted to say those few words still, because I feel that, Ras Thau Thau is, shouldn't be facing the kind of rhetoric that he's facing. He's on the ground, he's South African. So it's very difficult for any Rasta in South Africa to strike a balance and to be seen to be doing something with a system that is not for us. Give thanks for these few words and give thanks for the opportunity to speak. Rastafari bless.
Rastafari blessings. Ras, Ruben, Kush, we give thanks for that comment. Ja beloved, you have your hands raised. You can ask your question and then General Thau Thau will give us response. We've gone past the time, so we'll try and really.
I'll do my best. But first of all, I don't want us to create an impression or leave here feeling like Ras Thau Thau, the respected General Ras Thau Thau, was invited here to be made mockery of or to be attacked in any way. I haven't sensed any attack at all. Ras Thau Thau, if you have, please do forgive us, because you see, this is not an easy matter, right? It's a matter between brothers who are disappointed some way, somehow. You have expressed disappointment with how some other Africans behave in South Africa. And we are extremely disappointed at how our own kids and kin are responding to us like this. So let's work along those lines so that we're not passing blame. That's not what we're doing at all. As far as I'm concerned, we're trying to understand each other's logic so we can work together for a common solution moving forward. That said, though, Ras, I have a few issues that I'm still trying to grapple with. I don't know if you're familiar with South African comedian Trevor Noah. If you're not, please try and start following Trevor. Trevor made a statement about how our brothers and sisters in South Africa are letting companies like De Beers flourish with no trouble at all, and rather going to chase out people who are doing jobs like shining. This is how he put it. You are leaving those who are controlling your gold, the wealth, the diamonds, all that. You haven't touched them. But the ones that are coming to shine your shoes are the ones you are upset with. And I'm not saying you, General, please. I'm just saying the situation. When I say you, please pardon me, I'm talking about those who are fostering what's going on and who are aligning with that mindset, right? Because what essentially is happening is they are agreeing that it's okay for De Beers to continue mining the minerals. It's fine. But the one who's coming to shine their shoes, there's a problem with that. I have heard one other comedian mentioning that there are certain jobs that nobody would touch with a long pole. But you have other Africans coming to do that job. We have the same issue here in America. Nobody will go and pick the fruit with all due respect. A lot of Africans come here to do any type of job. I never find Africans going to go pick the fruit. They won't do that. The Mexicans will cross the border to do that. So if that's the case, you, as in South Africans, would not pick the fruit, would not pick the apples, would not do all that farm work. But other people are coming from Mozambique to do that. Why chase them out? Again, I have seen South Africans begging Asian people to offer jobs to their people. Please make it make sense to me. Please. Because all of a sudden, we are taking away the jobs. Which jobs? Driving the taxis, shining the shoes, doing the farm work. But the Asians who control the economy, who have the jobs that are employing people, you are begging them to employ yours. How does that make sense? It doesn't. Right? There are towns in South Africa that have advertised that Black people cannot go there in this day and age. I haven't seen your anger going in that direction.
Exactly.
And that's worrisome to me. It looks like this is targeted. Again, General, you referred to Africans. 1 second, please. I'll try to wrap up real quick. You referred to Africans as the problem. I'm wrapping up, please. Do spare me a couple more. 2 minutes, I beg you. I'll wrap up. Africans are the problem. Africans, how are they the problem? If a South African commits a crime in another country, does that make all South Africans the problem. I struggle to wrap my head around that also. Now let's go back. I'll use the last minute to review some points that I caught in your history expose. First of all, Busia kicking out Nigerians from Ghana. Every Ghanaian referred to that as the worst example ever. So that's nothing to make an excuse. Let's not even refer to that. That has been acknowledged by every sensible Ghanaian as a mistake. What Nigerians did to us back has also been acknowledged as a mistake. It's a lesson for us to learn from and move forward, not to refer to it and say Busia did this, and that's a historical fact that we have to use to do anything. Again, Kwame Nkrumah married an Ethiopian wife, Egyptian wife, because there's power politics, and I'm sure you understand that, right? Africa as a unit, Egypt has always been a world power, always been recognized. So him coming from Ghana, using marriage as a conduit to unite Africa, I think should not be condemned in the way that I feel like it's being presented right now. And because of time, I'll wrap it here. But again, I think that the South African situation is very terrible, but those who can do something about it are not doing enough about it. That's what I think. You, General Thau Thau, don't put yourself down, sir. I think that even though you say Rastas are not recognized, whatnot, you, believe me, have a very powerful voice. If your voice is the lone voice in the desert, believe me, it could make the difference. It could. Because once you sound the bugle, there are others who are going to jump on and support what you're saying. You mentioned Malema, right? You agree with what Malema is saying, it looks like. So why don't you also speak so that someone else who agrees with you will also join the bandwagon so we can move on? Let's not make this we versus them. South Africa, we need you. We need South Africa as part of Africa. Not deny your family. You don't choose your family. We are your family. You can't run away from us. Okay? If you want us to go and work in our backyard, we will do that. But you still are family. Let's take time to resolve that trauma coming from. We are suffering from trauma. I was discussing this with Sabi Fireside, and I was mentioning that South Africans are saying they are suffering from trauma, the trauma of apartheid, which is true, which is real. Let's not run away from that. But the rest of Africa, remember, is also suffering from of a different kind. So let's not use this as a we versus them situation. Let's use this as a platform to discuss the real issues from a dispassionate point of view and unite. African unity is real. Pan-Africanism is real. I hope you come back another time, General Thau Thau, so we can talk about this more, maybe from another perspective, but we need to talk with you a lot more, General.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for the comments and questions. We invite General Thau Thau to respond to it. Give thanks.
Give thanks, Ras Kofi. Give thanks, Elder Beloved. Let me recap on some of the things that the Elder just mentioned now, in terms of there are many cities that South Africans are not allowed to go by white people. That is not true. It's only small area called Orania. It's like reducing apartheid from being national to a small little town where this residue of apartheid wants to live and practice their culture, which has no bearing at all on South African system, economy, or anything. Just a small group of white people, just like those Trump took out of South Africa to America. He thought it's going to be a mass exodus of white people. There were only 49 and who are now crying to come back to South Africa because they were trying to hype up a situation that is not there. Now, in terms of jobs, there is no job that South Africans are not willing to do, except that after the fall of apartheid, they reject the slave wage that was given to them and go with what the government has put in place as a minimum salary wage, which our brothers from Africa have both undermined that legislation that people should be paid decent wage. They say to the white men, we are willing to take any job. A case in point, you have a lot of Zimbabweans who chase the white men from Zimbabwe and follow them into South Africa to work in their farms, to work those jobs you say South Africans are not willing to work. It's the same thing that they chased the white men from Zimbabwe for and took them from their farm, from their land. And now Zimbabwe is giving back 64 farms to the white men and is paying 148 million pounds as a reparation for kicking the white men out right now as you speak under the Mnangagwa government of Zimbabwe. So it's not entirely true to say all these jobs that are being occupied here are jobs that no South African wants to have. Julius Malema is encouraging South Africans that they should fight for mines, not to control the local economy. Now, himself, he formed a political party to take the land back, to take the economy back. Up to date, he hasn't done that. He's a member of parliament. He's leading one of the third biggest political party in South Africa. And then he's telling South Africans, ordinary South Africans, to fight for mines that he, from a privileged position, he can't even acquire that mine to, because to own a mine, which you mentioned that they are controlled by De Beers and others, is not simple. It's not an easy thing that every second South African can own a mine. Otherwise, most South Africans will be owning mines. We have some billionaires in this country who are in the same stature as Dangote, yet they don't own mines. They are not even owning commanding heights of the economy. They are not captains of industry. They are not employers. The same thing you complain about, that our people are fighting to be employed by the Asians. The ruling party, the ANC, is saying it is not the job of the government to create jobs. Every 5 years when they campaign, all political parties, they promise South Africans jobs that are going to be provided by the white private sector. So nobody in South Africa is putting efforts which are expected of ordinary South Africans, including myself, to kick the white men out. Nobody. Sorry. As a result, they are begging for the same white men and Indians and Arabs and Asians to employ South Africans. The campaign motto of Julius Malema's organization, EFF, is our land and jobs. But these jobs are expected to be provided by the same white people, which is basically they're saying if the white men live here, there will be no employer. Now you have businesses of the Somalis, Bangladesh, Ethiopians, which are businesses that are non-compliant with the city bylaws. 2 weeks back, I went to Lesotho. On my way back, I took a walk through Johannesburg CBD, Central Business District. The mayor of Johannesburg was closing shops that are not compliant. 90% of shops that you see them in Johannesburg run by Ethiopians, Somalis, and Bangladeshi. They don't comply with the rules of the country. Number two, they don't employ South Africans, they employ undocumented Zimbabweans. So when you say chasing these people will create unemployment for South Africans, it is not true, because they are not employing South Africans anyway. They are employing the political class, the social elites, the business people from Somalia and all of these countries. They are employing undocumented Africans. They're not employing South Africans. So these jobs that are there, which some of them are closed now, is they are not compliant and they are not contributing to the economy, and they are charged with money laundering. They are not contributing to tax. They don't bank in South Africa, because if they are taxed and SARS, South African Revenue Services, is able to extract tax from them, then they are able to create jobs for South Africans, but they are not doing that either. So again, this is a complex problem that requires complex solution. And we need to resist the temptation of trying to come up with simple solution to complex problems. This is a very, very complex problem. It's structural, it's systemic, and you having Bangladeshi, Ethiopians, and Somalians who are not employing South Africans because they've decided that these people, they demand rights. They have unions. We have to employ these ones who are undocumented. They don't complain when we underpay them. And you say they're coming to shine shoes. I told you that there's a program on South African TV every Sunday without failure. They are profiling Nigerian drug dealers. So Africans who are here are not only shining shoes, they're selling drugs. They're engaging in human trafficking. They're engaging in pimping women. They're engaging in running brothels. No one up till now has established a Pan-African Institute. No one has came here and said, let us help South African to finish the business of liberation from these white men whom we say they own their economy. Now, the political elites, they are also part of the problem. That is why they're not coming up with a solid solution, which now bring us to the point that when there are no leaders, the people are going to lead themselves. It has always been like that, and it will always be like that. Once the people whom they elected them to lead them, there is a date that is set on the 30th of June, which is Tuesday. That date, the man who came up with it, he just said, by the 30th of June, all illegal immigrants should have left South Africa. Everybody, the intellectuals, the political class, the government, they have decided to make anything out of that except what that person said about the date. The government has set aside all of a sudden 600 million rand to for the police and the soldiers to shoot South Africans if they're going to do anything to disrupt the white economy. Now we are having a political system that is protecting white economy. We're having the intellectual class that is protecting the economy. You are having the social elites that is protecting the white economy. You're having opposition parties when they contest election. We have about 400 political organizations. You know who's funding those political organizations? The Oppenheimers, the De Beers Oppenheimer family is one of the biggest. In our previous election, they funded 14 black political parties in order to divide the black vote in South Africa. Now, even political parties that are existing to protect South Africans are funded by white people. So the question of why don't you deal with white people when the people who are elected to deal with white people, starting with Julius Malema, are not dealing with white people. He's now going to be facing the Madlanga Commission because the biggest funder of his organization is an Italian cigarette smuggler who's smuggling cigarettes from Zimbabwe. When Julius Malema talks about borderless Africa, he's talking about a free passage of smuggled goods. It's criminality. Now you are having criminal political leaders who are implicated in any type of criminality. Julius Malema is implicated. This year alone, there's been so much revelation of him being implicated in any criminal, whether it's in the taxi industry, whether it is in this hit squad, they call them the Nkabi, whether it is in any type of criminality or criminal policemen, he is connected to them. Then you have political parties, those ones who are funded by white people and intellectuals, who are singing a script of this white man. They're the same people who are telling you all of these things, like the Trevor Noahs, who are telling you that there are jobs that South African wants to do. There is no such things. Even during apartheid, South Africans worked all type of work. Our mothers were called kitchen girls. Our fathers were called garden boys, because they were doing any type of job available for them. So therefore, that is not situationally correct. It's not a true reflection of what is going on. It's a narrative that fuel emotions and that makes you speak the way you speak about me and about South Africa and about South Africans. So South Africans have reached a point that they are willing to accept that we are going to have two things now: a United States of Africa and South Africa. And they're willing to pay that price. That if Africa deliberately choose to misunderstand us and to excuse what they don't excuse in their countries, but they want it to happen in South Africa. So we rather have United States of Africa there alone, engaging in whatever they want to do, and have a South Africa, patriotic South Africa here, engaging in protecting the rights of its citizens. We came out of apartheid, we jumped straight into another black apartheid. This problem, it starts from government, because it's government officials who are allowing this influx without monitoring, which is now an issue of national security, which is now an issue of political security, which is now an issue of economic security. Amilcar Cabral said, people are not fighting for ideas that are in someone's head. They're fighting for bread and butter issues. They're fighting for opportunities. They're fighting for their children to live good. That is exactly what South Africans are doing. They're not fighting for ideas that are in someone's head, Pan-Africanism, your own concept of Rastafari or what. They've passed that level. They don't fight for that anymore. They are fighting for bread and butter issues. It's an existential issue. Now, it can be correct that Africa must survive and South Africa must perish. If we're going to come up with a solution, it must be a win-win situation, or a win-win solution. That what is it that we can do that South Africans survive and Africans survive? But you can't tell South Africans and you can't insult them into silence. They've become dumb. They've become numb to that. Actually, there is a slogan they are talking now. They said, Ubuntu is suspended until further notice. Because it is because of this Ubuntu that we're in this problem. The same way how we were colonized is that we're too good and too kind and too humble to welcome the colonialist until they overrun us. Now they see the second wave of that this time we're not overrun by by the colonizers, we're overrun by our own people in the name of Ubuntu. So Ubuntu now is on suspension until further notice. And then they're saying the most Pan-African thing for Africans to do today is to go back and fix their countries that make them refugees into one country. Pan-Africanism is about African countries uniting to establish a super country called Africa. One country, one continent, one army, one economic system, one political system. But it can be that we try to have Pan-Africanism, which is based on all Africa going to unite in one country on the expenses of the citizens of that country. And when they try to voice out their discomfort, they are called Afrophobic, xenophobic, vigilantes. I'm telling you, South Africans, where we sit now, they are numb to that. They've had that before. In the past, it used to. These incidences, and this is probably the fourth one from 2008. They've now realized that some are using this for political campaign. Some are using this to gaslight them, to guilt trip them, to emotionally blackmail them. As much as is what I'm feeling now. I'm leaving this platform. I'm getting out of this platform, not being subdued, not having taken any of those things, but being more emboldened. Because every time I meet irrationality, every time I meet excuse a attempt to excuse African criminality under the banner of Pan-Africanism. It doesn't change my attitude. No amount of insulting me. They are insulting me on Facebook for the past 3 months, and it is not changing my position. What it's just saying to me is that we are lacking critical analysis to arrive at a solution. We are trying to just blame games, to turn South Africa into a pariah state. I'm living in South Africa. My children are here. My life is here. I was born here. So I can't join any chorus against my people, my country, if we're not willing to look at that. African government must take responsibility. The presidents of Africa must ask themselves, what is it about our countries that make our citizens move to another country? What is it that we are doing in terms of governance that makes our people turn into refugees? What is it that we're doing? Because there's something that is causing this movement and this influx. And it is bad governance, is corruption, is nepotism that we have excused. You have Africans who do not protest in their countries, but when they come to South Africa, they protest against the host government because there are a lot of liberties that are provided. And these liberties, some of them are being abused. The system itself. South African women, they found themselves that somehow they can't open accounts or they can't do something because they are blacklisted because somebody decided to use their identity fraudulently. There are myriad of issues, identity theft, drug trafficking, and all of that. If we're not willing to address anomalies and we just want to arrive at a simple solution, I'm sorry, I can't help with that. I tried. I was part of that. But until I have to reflect on the subjectivity of this position, which is rooted in mediocre. So give thanks for the moment and everything. I agree with you, Jabilave, that we need another session. I'm going to have to excuse myself because I went to my mother's house to use their Wi-Fi. I told you that electric cables from my house, they were stolen. I don't have electricity where I stay. I don't have Wi-Fi, but I have a transport that must pick me up, my queen and the children, so that we can go home. So it's already too late. So I'm going to have to go, not out of
Yes.
disrespect, but it is late now.
Yes, General Thau Thau, we thank you so much for making time to engage us on some of the issues that we may not understand from your perspective, and we give thanks for giving us the insights. Before you leave, you can give your closing remarks because we have hit past the time allotted for this conversation, except I wanted to take a brief statement from Daddy Bosco and Sipokazi, who is the chair of the RCC Commission. So if you can just wait for that, then you give us your closing remarks, then I'll be grateful that Daddy Bosco will chip in something, Sipokazi will just chip in a little, and then you give us your closing remark, if that's okay.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, Daddy B, please. Manche, Daddy B.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Greetings.
Greetings, my
So
lord.
I give thanks for this opportunity. What you call it? A lot of times you're eating and your tongue and your teeth have issues, but you still continue to eat. For some of us, I believe that after this conversation, we will continue to engage so that the ultimate objective of African unity across the continent is achieved. So give thanks, General Field Marshal Thau Thau, and give thanks for everybody who's made an opportunity to engage. Rastafari.
Last year. Yes, Empress Sipokazi. Give us a brief. Yes, Sipokazi, are you there? Yes, Pokazi. Well, then we'll hand over to General Thau Thau to give us his closing remarks. Give thanks.
Give thanks, Ras Asante. Give thanks, Daddy Bosco. Give thanks, Charlie. Give thanks also for the opportunity to come forward and to have this conversation. Indeed, it is necessary to reason. In Rastafari, we are taught that reasoning is a cornerstone, because in the process of reasoning, we're able to separate sense from nonsense. So it is a discourse that is designed to take us to a higher consciousness. So I agree with what Empress Marina said, that we need to have a summit. I also agree with Jah Beloved when he said we need to have another conversation, which I'm willing to avail myself if I'm not committed in that particular set date, so that we continue to communicate. What I've learned with studying world politics is that even when America and China and Russia is fighting, the diplomatic channel is always opened for communication. So we don't throw away the bath, the baby with the bath, but we still continue to communicate as brethren and sisters. So I will await for the next date for our engagement. But for now, I give thanks for the moment, and even for everyone who's been part of this conversation from the beginning to the end, for affording I that opportunity to share our view. I give thanks very much for that. Rastafari.
Rastafari. Give thanks, General Thau Thau. Give thanks, one and all, Daddy B, Rasaswad, Empress Marina, all the elders, empresses, for your presence and for keeping this conversation lively. I trust we will focus on the solution bit of the conversation in our subsequent reasoning with the history or the South African case study given to us. I'm sure this will reflect in our our contributions moving forward. So, General Thau Thau, once and all, we want to give thanks for this Rastafari reasoning. We'll reconvene again when time is due. Give thanks. Rastafari.
Rastafari, give thanks and praise.
Blessed love. Okay.